Hello, this is Bob Cook here from the YouTube channel TA Therapy, and this is my presentation on how therapists can use clinical supervision effectively for them. My major idea is that they need to create a good learning environment. So any supervisor that they pick needs to help them negotiate a good learning framework that they can enhance and develop their own learning about how to be a therapist from. So this is my list here that creates the learning environment for the therapist to actually be able to develop and enhance their supervisory skills. Firstly, the supervisee/therapist needs to choose the right supervisor in the first place for themselves. Secondly, they need to think about what is the best learning style for them, so that the supervisory relationship they have with their supervisor is enhancing their own particular learning style. Thirdly, they need to be developing their own internal supervisor. Fourthly, they need to be deepening their reflective skills and also looking at how they might sabotage their learning within supervision. They need to be thinking about creating, forming, and continuing a support network so they can celebrate, look at development, and have general support in the supervisory process. There needs to be a whole process around contracts, openness, curiosity, excitement, risk-taking, all parts of what makes up a learning environment so that the supervisee learns in a more safe, contained way. And finally, how they actually present cases in the first place, recording or case consultation. So all these different levels is needed when we're thinking about how the supervisee needs to create a good learning framework for their supervisory experience. Okay, so let's look at this in more detail. Let's look at choosing the right supervisor for you. Very important. My suggestion is you interview your potential supervisor. You ask him and you think for yourself, what do you want from a supervisor? And you think about what you don't want from a supervisor. Make some lists, such as, have you got similar values, morals? Does the supervisor come from the same therapeutic skill set as yours? What are the expectations that a supervisor or a supervisee will want? Do you want your supervisor to be a friend? Do you want your supervisor to be somebody who you respect and look up to? Do you want your supervisor to be somebody who is experiential, cognitive, meta perspective? I mean, what do you want from your supervisor? This is a general question, and what don't you want? So I suggest you interview your supervisor, get to know them, get to know what their style of supervision is, what they would expect for you, and then go from there. Really important, this one, because this sets the whole framework. Okay, knowing your own best learning style. Again, very important, because everybody learns in a particular way, and therefore it is very important that you can impart this knowledge to your supervisor so he can implement that in his supervision experience with you. So, for example, do you learn best visually? Do you learn best through a thinking experience? Do you learn best when there's an emotional experience first? Well, in fact, are you the sort of person who needs to have experience first? Once you can put this profile together, then you know the sort of supervisionary experience which would be good for you in terms of learning on a whole basis. Also, developing your own internal supervisor, creating a third eye. Mainly, you would develop your own internal supervisor for modeling and taking on board the model of your own supervisor from your supervisory practice, so that when you actually are in the therapeutic arena, you've almost got a sort of internal supervisor which you can call on to reflect on clinical interventions, etc., etc. And eventually you will develop what Patrick Caseman called a third eye phenomena, which you'll integrate and eventually be part of you. Deepening your reflective skills. So this is the ability to what we call retrospective introspection. In other words, the ability to reflect, to look at the clinical cases, to look at your process with your client, to look at what particular clinical interventions you were caught up in, what's the counter-transference, what was happening between the two of you. But most of all, it's looking at the process of the therapeutic relationship rather than just concentrating perhaps on problem solving. It's more a being process rather than the doing process. Very important for any supervisor to help you develop this reflective practitioner part of yourself, which will aid learning, deepen learning, and of course take you to a different plane within the therapeutic process. So developing your reflective skills is really important here. Just as important is creating your support network. So peer supervision, getting some colleagues and peers around you who will help you look at supervision, help you talk about your worries and anxieties with colleagues perhaps at the same developmental levels at you, who can give you the support that you need, as well as just your individual supervisor. I think it's very important for a collegial network to enable you to develop in the areas that you want to as a therapist stroke supervisee, a very important one. And I think that support network needs to be a nurturing, enriching environment, and will help you create the positive inner dialogue within yourself, which will become integrated within the therapeutic process. Okay, number 8, very important to aid your learning environment, that you have overall contracts with your supervisor, that you have sessional contracts and review contracts about goals and outcomes that you want from supervision to aid your learning experience and your learning developmental process. So you know what the expectations are of your supervisor, but more important that you can set as well with him your learning plan, how you want to learn, what you want to achieve from your learning, and a reviewing process within that learning becomes very important in the development of yourself at a professional level within the supervisory process. Okay, let's go on to 9. Finally, all the above, that's openness, curiosity, excitement, and finally risk-taking, are really important in the aid of learning and motivation, especially motivation, to be able to keep your passion about learning and how to develop new skills and how to actually enhance yourself within the therapeutic process, to be open to reflection, to be excitement and curious about the therapeutic process, to keep that excitement going, and finally to take risk-taking, going that extra mile, but also looking at that in a clinical way. They'll all aid your learning experience and develop your motivational aspect, which is so needed in this profession that we're in today. And finally, I think it's very important with any learning environment to talk with your supervisor about how to present cases. So when you go to supervision, you can get the best out of your case presentation. Is it going to be supervision through audio recording, taking tapes? If so, then you need to talk about how you learn from tape audio recording. What types of audio recording would you take? What are you going to get out of taking tapes to supervision? What does the supervisor want for you to examine when you take those tapes? Do you want the supervision or learning to be through case consultation, where you take cases along and discuss them? And if so, what learning do you want to get from these case consultations? You might just want supervision through note taking. Again, how will that aid your learning? How that will that develop your learning so that you can be better skilled for your clients. So what are you going to look for when you present your cases to your supervisor? What learnings do you want to have from that whole process? It's very important that you take responsibility for your learning outcomes, your learning development, what might sabotage your learning development. Very important aspects in the whole development of being a supervisor supervisee in this process. I think it's probably the most important thing that you can, with your supervisor, take charge and some responsibility in what you are going to develop in this supervisory relationship. Okay, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this short presentation on the effectiveness of creating a learning environment in the development of the young therapist in their supervisory relationship. Thank you, and thank you for listening. Bye-bye.